So let's dive in and get what you need installed to actually develop real Spark code on your desktop using Python. There's a lot of steps involved, so please be careful and follow along carefully. Hit the pause button on the video as you need to keep up with me, okay? It's important that you get every step right. We need to install Enthought Canopy, which is going to be our development environment in our Python environment. We need to install Spark itself, which itself is a pretty big process. And we need to install a JDK as well before we do any of that. So let's do this, and when we're done, we'll actually run a real Spark script and get a little payoff for all that work. Let's get started. Alright, let's get you set up with everything you need to get started as quickly as possible. First thing you're going to need is some sort of development environment, an IDE for Python code. And what I'm going to use in this course is Enthought Canopy. It's a scientific computing environment, and it's going to work well with this course. Now, you might already have an existing Python environment, and if you want to stick with it and you're comfortable with it, that's okay. Just make sure you know how to install packages into it. The other thing you need to be aware of, though, is that Canopy installs a Python 2.7 environment, whereas the environment you're using might have a Python 3 environment. And there are differences between Python 2.7 and Python 3 code that you need to be aware of. So, for example, if you want to use Anaconda, you're going to have a much easier time if you put Anaconda into Python 2.7 mode while you're using this course, okay? If you really want to use the Python 3 environment, you're going to run into some little glitches with my scripts in this course here and there. It's mostly little things like, print statements need to have parentheses around them in Python 3. Nothing major, so if you are comfortable with Python and Python 3, you can stick with it, but you will have a much easier time if you follow the steps here and actually use Enthought Canopy or a Python 2.7 environment. So to get Canopy installed, just go to enthought.com here, www.enthought.com. There'll be a link for this in the resources for this lecture, and say download Canopy. It is free. And we're going to select your operating system and architecture. For me, that's Windows 64-bit, and download. We don't have to give them any personal information, so I'm not going to, and down it will come. So there's a pretty standard Windows installer here. I'm not going to bore you with the details, so we'll just let that download kick it off, and then through the magic of video editing, we'll come back when that's done. Okay, so we finished the installer and we let it run for the first time, after which it did a big Canopy setup operation, and after you run it, you should see something like this. It's going to ask if you want to make Canopy your default Python environment, and normally you'll say yes. If you do have another environment you want to use as well, you can say no and switch it back and forth in Canopy's preferences like it says. But let's go ahead and start Canopy. And if things install successfully, you should see something like this. Alright, we're good. Alright, let's go on to the next step. Alright, let's get Spark set up on your desktop. There's a lot of steps involved, so follow along carefully. Okay, hit pause when you need to keep up. First thing we need to do is install a JDK. So if I just go to Google and search for JDK, that's the Java Development Kit, it should take us to the right place. Go ahead and click on that. The reason we need a JDK is even though we're developing in Python, Spark ultimately compiles down to Java bytecode. So we need a Java development environment and a Java runtime environment for that to work. Go ahead and click on the latest JDK download here. And we'll accept the license agreement, select the development kit appropriate for your operating system. For me, that's Windows 64-bit. Download it and install it. Alright, I've launched the installer for the JDK. We'll just walk through it here. Now I am going to change the install path to be, in this case, CJDK. How about that? Just because I need to remember it, and it needs to be something that's relatively short. Everything else I'll keep as default. And it's actually going to prompt me again for a path. So I'm going to have to change that path a second time once it gets to that point. So let's wait for this to finish, and then we'll do that. Alright, here we are at the second step of the JDK installation. Again, I need to change the path, and I want it to be CJDK. And off it goes. And we'll come back when that's done. Alright. So our JDK is installed, hooray! We can move on to installing Spark itself. So now let's get Spark itself set up. Head on over to spark.apache.org, and you should see a website like this. And go ahead and click on the Download tab here. And we want to select the latest Apache Spark release. We want a pre-built for Hadoop 2.6 version, okay? This is very important, otherwise it's not gonna work, okay? Make sure you get a pre-built version. And we can just hit the download link now to go grab that. Now you'll notice that this is actually a TGZ file that's coming down. We'll use whatever mirror site they recommend. Now Windows does not have support for TGZ files built in. It's basically a compression format like a zip file. So if you don't already have something installed that can handle TGZ files, What I use is a program called WinRAR, and you can just head over to WinRAR. Search for WinRAR or WinRAR. It's hard to say, isn't it? WinRAR downloads. And you can find it here for whatever operating system you're using. So if you install this on Windows, it will let you right-click on these TGZ files and extract them like we're about to do right now. So that's still coming down. Let's, through the magic of video editing, come back when that Spark package is fully downloaded. Okay, so Spark is downloaded. Again, this is a pre-built for Hadoop version. And I'm just going to open that up wherever it downloaded to. And since I have WinRAR installed, I can just right-click on that puppy and extract it. And there are a lot of files in there, so that'll take a little bit of time. So let's open up the folder it decompressed into here. And you should ultimately see something like this. So within this Spark, whatever version you downloaded folder, is the contents of the Spark distribution itself. Okay, so let's keep this window over here and open up a new File Explorer window. And I'm going to create a directory where Spark is going to live. And for me, I'm going to put that on my C drive, and I'm going to create a new folder called Spark. So Spark for me is going to live under C Spark. So let's open up that C Spark folder. And then I'm going to copy all these contents of the Spark distribution into that C Spark folder. Okay, so very important. I'm pasting in the contents of Spark, not the Spark folder itself. All right, so what I should have now is my C drive with a Spark folder in it that contains all this stuff. All right, well, we're not done yet. Unfortunately, there's a few things we need to configure. So while we're in here, let's open up the conf folder. And in order to make sure that we don't get spammed to death by log messages, we're going to change the logging level setting here. So to do that, we're going to click on this log4j.properties.template file and take off the .template part and make it an actual log4j.properties. And Spark will use this to configure its logging. And now we can open that up in a text editor of some sort. And you see here where it says log4j.root category equals info. Let's change that to warn. In fact, you might even want to set it to error, but warn will be enough to get rid of most of the annoying messages. So save that. And that step is finished. All right, a few more things we need to set up. There are some quirks about Windows, so this next step is for Windows only. What we're going to do is download a utility called winutils.exe. And there'll be a link to this in the resources, but if you need to copy it, here is the path where you can download that from that I'm hosting myself. And what this is a little hacky thing that kind of tricks Spark out into thinking that it's actually on a Hadoop cluster, even though it's really just running on your Windows desktop. So once you've downloaded that file, and yes, it's an executable, trust me, it's not a virus. If you're paranoid, you can download it from somewhere else. But anyway, go to where you downloaded that and copy that. And what I want you to do is go back to your C drive and create a new folder. And this one's going to be called WinUtils. Okay, now open up that WinUtils folder, and inside of that, I want you to create a bin folder. All right, and now inside of that bin folder, I want you to paste in that winutils.exe file that we downloaded. Okay, so you should have C winutils bin and then winutils.exe. Okay, make sure you get all this right. I mean, everything needs to be spelled properly in exactly the right place, or else you're going to run into trouble. So be careful. Double check everything you're doing. Hit pause to keep up with me. Take your time, okay? All right, now we need to set some environment variables in order for things to work. So to do that, I'll show you how to do it on Windows. Basically, you can just right-click on the Start menu here and go to Control Panel under Windows 10 and hit System and Security. And then hit System. And from there, Advanced System Settings. And from here, hit Environment Variables. Now, this is a very Windows-specific way of setting environment variables. On other operating systems, you'll use different processes. So remember, this is Windows-specific, and if you're on a different OS, you'll want to look up how to install Spark on it. All right, so we're going to set up some new user variables here. The first one is going to be called, we're going to hit New here for a new user variable, and we're going to call it Spark_home, just like that, okay, all uppercase. And this is going to point to where we installed Spark, which is going to be for us C:\\Spark, just like that. All right. Now we also need to set up a Java home, Java_home, to where we installed Java, which for us, recall, was C:\JDK. Okay. And we also need to set up Hadoop home, just like that. And that's going to be where we installed the winutils package. So that's going to be c:\winutils. So far, so good. All right, last thing we need to do is modify our path. So you should have a path environment variable here. If you don't, it's a little bit fishy. You might be on a managed system where they don't actually let you change these things. So you might want to see if you can run it under an administrator account or something like that. But if you do have a path, click on it, edit it. If you don't make one, if you don't have one, you can create a new one. And what you want to do is add in a couple of things here. So first of all, make sure you have Java home enclosed in parentheses \bin in there already. If you don't add that in, should have been added by the JDK installer automatically, but sometimes things go wonky. Now I want you to hit new, and what we're going to type in here is %, make sure you get this exactly right, Spark _home %, \bin, okay? So basically this makes all the binary executables of Spark available to Windows wherever you're running it from. Hit OK. Hit OK again, hit OK again, and we have finally everything set up. So let's go ahead and try it out in our next step. All right, let's get a payoff for all the setup work that we've done. Let's actually run some actual Spark code using Python for real. All right, let's open up a command prompt in Windows, preferably as an administrator. And if you don't have a handy-dandy shortcut like I do, you'll find it under the Start menu. Go to All Apps and go to Windows System, and there's a command prompt there, okay? But you'll probably want to keep a shortcut in your taskbar like I do. All right, so I want you to cd to c:\Spark, which is where we installed Spark in our previous steps. Make sure that we have Spark in there, so there's all the contents of the Spark distribution pre-built. And let's look at what's in here. So there's this big changes.txt file that's a change log. That's an interesting file. So let's write a really simple Spark program that counts how many lines of text are in that file. All right, so all we're going to do is type in PySpark, just like that. And when I hit that, it should launch my Python environment through Canopy, and then launch Spark itself, just like that. Woo! Check it out, we're running Spark interactively. Now, if you're not seeing this and you're seeing some weird Windows error about not being able to find PySpark, go back and double check all those environment variables. Odds are there's something a little bit wrong with your path or with your Spark home environment variables. And sometimes you need to log out of Windows and log back in order to get environment variable changes to get picked up by the system. So if all else fails, try that. Also, if you got cute and installed things to a different path than I recommended in the setup videos, make sure that your environment variables reflect those changes. Some other common problems, if you chose to put it in a folder that has spaces in the name, that can cause problems as well. And if your path is too long, if you have too much stuff in your path, that can also cause problems. So some things to look at if you're running into trouble there. One other possibility is that you're running on a managed PC that doesn't actually allow you to change environment variables. So you might have thought you did it, but there might be some administrative policy preventing you from doing so. If so, try running the setup steps again under a new account that's an administrator if possible. But assuming you've gotten this far, let's have some fun. So let's write some code, shall we? Let's type this in, RDD space equals space sc.txt file with a capital F, open parenthesis, quote, changes.txt, just like that. So make sure you get that exactly right. Remember, those are parentheses, not brackets, and case can matter on some operating systems, so that all matters. What this is doing is creating something called a resilient distributed data store, and we're going to talk about this a lot more shortly. That is constructed of each line of input text in that changes.txt file. And Spark can actually distribute the processing of this object through an entire cluster. Now let's just find out how many lines are in it. How many lines did we import into that RDD? RDD.count, open close parenthesis, and we'll get our answer. It actually ran a full-blown Spark job just for that. And the answer is 34,960 lines in that file. Now, your answer might be different depending on what version of Spark you installed, but the important thing is that you got a number there. And you actually ran a Spark program that could do that in a distributed manner if it was running on a real cluster. So congratulations. Everything's set up properly. You have run your first Spark program already on Windows, and now we can get into how it's all working and doing some more interesting stuff with Spark. So to get out of this, just type in quit, open close parenthesis, and once that's done, you can close this window and move on.